Human stayed beside the wounded alien girl all night. Her first smile was his only reward. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The wind clawed across the frozen outpost like a living thing, rattling loose panels and filling the night with a low metallic hum. Ethan Cole stepped out of the maintenance bay, visor fogging for a moment before the suit heaters caught up, pushing warm air across the glass. The temperature gauge blinked a brutal -30 degrees Fahrenheit, and the storm lights along the walkway flickered as if unsure they could hold the darkness back. He had planned only a quick sensor check, nothing more. But then he saw it, a faint shimmer on the snow, almost like spilled light. Ethan knelt, brushing gloved fingers across the frozen ground. A trail of pale blue droplets caught the glow of his helmet lamp, strangely luminous against the ice. Not human, not any wildlife he knew. His pulse kicked up. Storm or not, someone out there was hurt. The trail pulled him away from the safety of the outpost, past the last marker beacon where the wind halted sound itself. Snow blasted sideways, scratching at his armor, but he kept moving until a dim shape appeared against the drift, a collapsed figure half buried by the storm. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her. A girl, alien. Her skin, beneath the frost, held a soft blue radiance, as if light lived just under the surface. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, more a tremor than a rhythm. A fractured piece of armor clung to her shoulder, its edges frosted over. She looked impossibly young in that moment, smaller than the stories, more fragile than he expected from a species known for strength. He checked for injuries without lifting her too much, careful, deliberate, the way he'd once handled patients back home. Her pulse fluttered faintly against his glove. Alive, but fading. The storm howled louder, scooping loose snow across her form until Ethan brushed it away. With urgent palms. She didn't stir. He didn't know who she was or why she was here, and Protocol shouted at him to call command first. But Protocol wasn't the one slowly freezing in his arms. Ethan exhaled, breath misting inside the helmet. "I've got you," he murmured, even though she couldn't hear him. He gathered her carefully, lifting her against his chest, adjusting her weight so her head rested safely beneath his chin. She was cold, too cold, and he tightened his hold as if warmth alone could anchor her to the world. The outpost lights were barely visible through the whiteout, flickering in and out of existence, but he walked toward them one steady step at a time. Each gust shoved at him, threatening to steal his footing, yet he kept going, boots carving a determined path across the frozen ground. Inside his helmet, the comm crackled with static, the storm jamming the signal, leaving him alone with the hiss of his own breath. When the airlock finally hissed open, warm light flooded around him, melting frost along his suit. He stepped inside without hesitation, carrying the girl close, feeling the subtle tremor of her breath against his chest. Tonight was supposed to be quiet, routine, but as the door sealed behind them and the storm screams faded to a distant moan, Ethan knew nothing about this night would be ordinary again. The warmth of the airlock barely reached Ethan before he was moving again, carrying the girl through the narrow corridor toward the small medical room tucked behind the maintenance bay. The overhead lights flickered with each surge of the storm outside, casting brief shadows across her face. Frost clung to her hair like tiny crystals, and her skin, normally faintly luminous, had dulled to a muted blue. Ethan set her gently on the examination bed, the cushioning shifting beneath her slight weight. The room hummed with familiar sounds, a soft whir from the heater vents, the steady blinking of an old vital monitor, the faint buzz of fluorescent panels overhead. He powered on the scanner, its low chime echoing in the quiet space. As the readings populated, he rubbed the back of his neck, trying to ground himself. Her pulse appeared faint but steady. Oxygen levels low. Body temperature dangerously below safe thresholds. He had seen numbers like these before in mountain rescue teams back on Earth, but never with someone whose physiology was not entirely human. He pulled a thermal blanket from the storage cabinet, unfolding it carefully before draping it over her. The fabric adjusted to her shape, warming slowly as it detected her temperature. Her breathing fluttered, a soft, uneven rise and fall that made him pause each time it faltered. He adjusted a small heater unit closer to the bed, angling it so the warm air flowed across her without overwhelming her senses. The comm unit on the wall crackled again, faint voices breaking through before the storm swallowed them entirely. If Command wanted an update, they would need to wait. He was not leaving her side. He removed his gloves, fingertips stiff from the cold, and checked her wrist again. Her skin was cool beneath his touch, silk smooth with faint markings that traced along her veins like threads of moonlight. He did not know her name or how she ended up alone in a storm strong enough to tear panels off buildings. But he knew she was here now, and that was enough. He placed a small sensor pad gently against her temple. The monitor responded with a soft tone, showing weak but stable neural activity. A quiet breath left him, part relief, part worry. She shifted slightly, just a small movement, but enough to make him freeze. Her eyelids fluttered as though trying to lift under a weight. Ethan leaned closer without crowding her. "You are safe," he said softly, voice barely above a whisper. "You are inside. Warm. Just rest." Her eyes did not open, but the tension in her shoulders eased. That tiny change was enough to let him breathe again. He dimmed the overhead lights, leaving only the soft glow of the monitor and the gentle amber wash from the heater. The storm outside continued to batter the outpost, rattling loose equipment and making the walls groan. But inside this small room, time felt held in place. Ethan pulled a chair beside the bed, settling into it with quiet determination. He kept one hand near the controls, ready to adjust anything the instant she needed it. The night stretched long ahead of him, but he did not consider sleep. Not while she lay here, fighting for warmth and breath. He watched the small rise and fall of her chest, steadying his own breathing to match it. In the hum of machines and distant storm, he found a strange calm. Whatever tomorrow brought, whatever questions waited beyond this room, could stay there. Tonight, she was not alone. And neither, he realized, was he. The heater's gentle hum blended with the storm's fading rumble, creating a strange rhythm that filled the small medical room. Hours had passed, though Ethan was not sure how many. Time was measured only by the changing pattern of the girl's breathing and the occasional flicker of the monitor beside her. He leaned forward in the chair, elbows on his knees, watching her face. Up close, her features were delicate, almost serene despite the exhaustion etched into every line. A faint shimmer ran beneath her skin, soft and cool like moonlight trapped underwater. It was the only sign that her strength was returning. When her fingers twitched beneath the blanket, Ethan straightened. Her eyelids fluttered once, then again, and finally opened. Her eyes were a pale silver, clear and sharp even in the dim light, and they fixed on him with a sudden alertness that made his breath catch. She tried to sit up, and Ethan raised a hand slowly, not touching her, but offering the idea of support. "Easy," he said, keeping his voice calm. "You are safe. You are inside the outpost. You were found in the storm." She looked around the room, her expression wary, taking in the equipment, the closed door, the blanket around her. Her breathing quickened, not from fear exactly, but from confusion layered with instinctive caution. "Did I harm anyone?" Her voice was soft, melodic, carrying an accent he had never heard before. Ethan shook his head. "No. You were alone. Nearly frozen. I brought you in." She absorbed this quietly, her gaze drifting back to him. For a moment, she studied him with such intensity that he felt as if she could see every thought in his head. Then her eyes softened, just barely. "Why would you help me?" Ethan hesitated. The real answer felt too simple, too human, but he offered it anyway. "Because you were hurt. Because no one deserves to be left out there." She blinked, as if the concept was unexpected. Her voice dropped to a faint whisper. "Even if I am not human?" "Especially then," Ethan said. He reached for the small cup of warm electrolyte solution he had prepared earlier, holding it. "Out. Sip this slowly." She hesitated, then accepted it with careful hands. Her fingers brushed his for the briefest moment, cool against his warmth. She drank, eyes closed, focusing on each swallow. When she finished, her strength seemed steadier, though her shoulders remained tense. "What is your name?" Ethan asked gently. She paused as though deciding whether to answer. Leora. The name fit her, light and quiet. I am Ethan, he offered. She nodded once, acknowledging the exchange. But her gaze moved to the door, lingering there. He recognized that look, the instinct to flee, the uncertainty of waking in a strange place. You are not a prisoner, he said softly. The door stays closed only because of the storm. You can leave when you are strong enough. Leora looked back at him, her silver eyes steady. You stayed with me. Ethan exhaled a quiet breath. Yes. Her expression shifted, something small but unmistakable. Not trust. Not yet, but the beginning of recognition. She lay back against the pillow, watching him as if trying to understand why someone would give time, warmth, and safety without expecting anything in return. Outside, the storm finally began to ease, but inside the quiet room, something else had begun to thaw as well. Morning settled over the outpost in quiet shades of gray. The storm finally reduced to a distant whisper against the reinforced walls. Ethan adjusted a small panel on the heater, making sure the airflow stayed gentle across Leora's blanket. She watched him with a cautious steadiness, her silver eyes following each movement as though memorizing them. Her breathing was stronger now, no longer shallow, and the faint glow under her skin had returned, tracing soft patterns along her arms like shifting starlight. Ethan checked the monitor again, relieved to see the readings inching closer to stable. Your temperature is improving, he said. Another few hours, and you should be strong enough to sit up. Leora's gaze drifted toward her damaged armor resting on the nearby counter. Frost still clung to its edges, a reminder of how close she had come to the storm's grip. You carried me from the ice, she said quietly. It was not a question, more an observation she was only now processing. Ethan nodded. You would not have survived out there much longer. Leora absorbed that with a faint lift of her chin, as if the idea of being helpless still unsettled her. She tried shifting her arm, testing her strength, but winced slightly. Ethan stepped forward without thinking, his hand hovering near hers but not touching. She noticed the gesture, her expression tightening with instinctive pride before softening again. You do not have to stay here, she said, her tone neutral but layered with something he could not quite place. Your duties must call you elsewhere. Ethan shook his head. There is nothing more important than making sure you recover properly. She held his gaze for a long moment, searching for insincerity and finding none. Her shoulders eased, just a fraction. He moved to the counter, retrieving a small device resembling a handheld scanner. I need to check your circulation, he explained. This will only take a moment. He activated it, and a soft ring filled the air as it scanned along her arm. Leora watched him work with quiet curiosity. You show concern without knowing who I am, she said. Why? Ethan locked the device back into its cradle before answering. I did not need to know your name to know you deserved help. Leora blinked once, slowly, as if the concept was unfamiliar. She looked down at her hands beneath the blanket, turning them slightly, as if wondering what made them worthy of protection. A brief silence settled between them, comfortable and still. Then a soft alarm chirped from the console near the door, pulling Ethan's attention. The storm interference had weakened enough for messages to slip through. A new directive flashed across the screen, though the details were still scrambled. Leora watched him read it, tension flickering across her face. Is it about me? She asked. Ethan hesitated. It might be, he admitted, keeping his voice steady. But whatever it is, it can wait. Right now, you need rest. Leora's expression shifted in a way he had not seen before, gentle and almost vulnerable. Ethan, she said, speaking his name slowly as if testing its shape. You stayed. Many would not have. Ethan sat down again, settling into the chair beside her bed. Then they would have missed the chance to see you getting stronger. Leora looked at him, the faintest curve forming at the corner of her lips before fading like a shy sunrise. It was not quite a smile, not yet, but something warmer than anything she had allowed him to see before. Outside, the storm clouds began to break apart, letting thin bands of morning light stretch across the frozen horizon. Inside the small room, Leora shifted slightly under the blanket and closed her eyes, no longer out of exhaustion, but because, for the first time since arriving, she felt safe enough to rest. The morning wore on in a quiet rhythm, broken only by the soft beeping of the monitor and the muted creaks of the outpost settling after a long night of wind. Leora slept more peacefully now, her breathing steady, her features relaxed in a way Ethan had not yet seen. He sat nearby, working through a maintenance report on his tablet, but his attention drifted off into the rise and fall of her chest beneath the blanket. Sunlight, faint but present, filtered through the narrow window, touching her skin with a gentle glow that seemed to answer from within. When she finally stirred, the room felt different, as if it had taken a breath with her. Leora opened her eyes slowly, adjusting to the soft light. "How long?" she asked, her voice slightly stronger than the night before. "A few hours," Ethan replied. "Your temperature stabilized. That is a good sign." She pushed herself up with careful movements, the blanket sliding to her waist. The heater had warmed the room to a comfortable level, but she still held the blanket close, as if savoring the felt safety it provided. Her gaze drifted to the window. "Your world is quieter than mine," she said. Ethan smiled faintly. "This place?" "Yes. It is peaceful until the storms roll in." Leora watched the frost on the glass, tracing the patterns with her eyes. "Storms do not frighten me," she murmured. "It is the silence afterward that feels unfamiliar." There was something in the way she said it, something that hinted she was used to safety, and used to waking without immediate danger pressing in. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "You are safe here." "Truly." Leora looked at him, curiosity softening her features. "You speak of safety as if it is simple." "It is not," he admitted. "But it is real." She studied him again, that same focused attention he had felt earlier, like she was weighing not just his words but the space between them. Then, with a slow breath, she shifted her legs over the edge of the bed. Her feet touched the floor, and she steadied herself with her hands. Ethan rose from his chair instantly, but did not reach for her. He knew enough now to let her find her balance first. Leora stood, wavering only slightly. The soft glow under her skin brightened with effort, and she closed her eyes as if feeling the ground beneath her for the first time in days. "Do not rush it," Ethan said gently. "Your muscles need time." She opened her eyes, a faint trace of determination shining there. "I do not like being weak." Ethan shook his head. "You are not weak. You are recovering." Leora considered that, her expression thoughtful. She took one small step, then another, her movements controlled but cautious. Ethan stayed close without hovering, ready to assist if she needed it. After a few moments, she stopped, leaning lightly against the edge of the bed. "Your care is unusual," she said quietly. "Many in your position would fear me or question my presence here." "Fear comes later," Ethan replied. "Right now, you needed help." Leora tilted her head slightly. "You say that as if it is obvious." Ethan offered a soft shrug. "Maybe it is. Or maybe we just choose the kind of person we want to be when moments like this arrive." She seemed to take that in deeply, her gaze drifting to the window again. The sunlight had shifted, warming the frost into droplets that slid down the glass like slow rain. Leora touched the blanket at her waist, fingers brushing its edge thoughtfully. "This place," she said, "feels different. As if time slows here." Ethan chuckled quietly. "Most people say that is because nothing exciting ever happens on this outpost." Her eyes returned to him, steady and calm in a way they had not been before. "That is not true," she said. "Something happened." She paused, then added softly, "You stayed." And for the first time, the quiet between them felt warm rather than empty. The room had grown warmer as the morning settled fully into the outpost, but Leora still stood near the bed with the cautious posture of someone learning the limits of her strength. Ethan stayed a short distance away, close enough to help, but far enough to honor the quiet independence she kept reclaiming piece by piece. She tested another step, her balance improving, though her movements remained careful. The faint glow beneath her skin pulsed gently with each breath, as if her body were slowly awakening from a long sleep. Ethan adjusted a small stabilizing rail beside the bed, angling it toward her. "Use this if you need support," he said. Leora glanced at the rail, then at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. "You think I will fall?" "I think you are recovering," he replied evenly. "And recovering is not the same thing as failing." She considered that, then reached for the rail, her fingers settling lightly on the metal. The gesture was small, but it carried a quiet acceptance that made Ethan's chest ease. She took another step, then another, Her breathing stayed steady, though a faint tremor ran down her arm. Ethan noticed it, but said nothing. Leora paused halfway between the bed and the window, looking out at the pale horizon beyond the frost-streaked glass. Thin bands of sunlight stretched across the ice fields, turning the snow into sheets of soft silver. "Your world is bright," she murmured, "even when it is cold." Ethan followed her gaze. "It has its moments." She turned slightly toward him, curiosity returning to her features. "Is this where you are from?" Ethan shook his head. "No. I grew up farther south. Warmer climate. Fewer storms. But you chose to come here." "Yes." She held his gaze. "Why?" Ethan leaned against the counter, arms loosely crossed. "Because sometimes the quiet places are the ones that need people the most. Outposts like this are forgotten unless something goes wrong. I wanted to help where others did not want to go." Leora studied him in silence, her silver eyes softening in a way he had seen only once before. "You choose the difficult path," she said quietly. "You call it difficult," Ethan replied. "I call it the right one." She looked back toward the window, her expression distant, thoughtful. "In my world," she said slowly, "strength is measured by how much burden one can carry. But I have learned that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to set a burden down." A faint tremble touched her voice, not from weakness but from honesty. Ethan recognized the vulnerability behind it, something she had not allowed herself to reveal until now. "You do not have to carry anything alone here," he said gently. Leora turned to him, her posture still tall but the tension in her shoulders easing. "You speak as if it is simple," she said. "As if choosing trust is as natural as choosing breath." "It can be," Ethan said. "But it takes time." She nodded, a small, thoughtful movement. "Time," she repeated, as though testing the word. She took another few steps, steadier now, then made her way back to the bed. When she sat, she released the rail with a slow exhale. Ethan reached for a fresh blanket and placed it beside her. Leora looked at it, then at him, with a faint, almost puzzled warmth. "You think of everything," she said softly. Ethan smiled at that. "Not everything. Just what matters." She lowered her eyes briefly, and when she lifted them again, there was something new there, something unspoken but unmistakably real. "Ethan," she said, her voice quiet but sure, "what if your people learn I am here?" Ethan met her gaze, steady and calm. "Then we will face that moment when it comes. Not before." Her shoulders relaxed, and she looked away, not in avoidance but in relief. For the first time since he had carried her in from the storm, she seemed to believe him. Outside, the last of the storm clouds drifted apart, letting sunlight spill across the outpost in soft, patient light. Inside, the space between them settled into a fragile but growing trust, the kind that did not need words to be understood. The quiet of the outpost held steady through most of the afternoon, a calm so complete that Ethan almost forgot how fragile it was. Leora rested after her short walk, her strength returning in slow, deliberate waves. She watched the window often, studying the thinning clouds with an expression that hovered between curiosity and concern. Ethan worked nearby, repairing a small heater core on the counter, but his attention kept drifting back to her. Each time he glanced her way, Leora seemed a little steadier, a little more present. The glow beneath her skin had brightened, tracing soft luminescent lines along her arms like quiet constellations. But it was the look in her eyes that told him something had shifted. She was no longer waiting for danger. She was waiting for truth. When the console near the doorway chimed, the sound cut cleanly through the room. Ethan froze for a fraction of a second before stepping toward it. The storm had cleared enough for communication signals to stabilize. A new message appeared on the screen, clearer than the one before. Leora watched him, her posture still and alert. Ethan scanned the text. It was brief, but its meaning was unmistakable. A request for status, a reminder that unidentified movement had been detected during the storm, and a directive to verify all life forms within the outpost. Leora's voice was quiet when she spoke. "It is about me." Ethan turned toward her. "They do not know who you are. It is only a routine check." She held his gaze, her silver eyes steady. "That is not the whole truth." Ethan exhaled slowly. "No, it is not." She waited, not pressing, but expecting an answer. Ethan leaned against the counter, the weight of the moment settling on him. "If command learns you are here, they will want to move you. They will ask questions. They may not understand what happened in the storm. Leora folded her hands in her lap, thoughtful. And what do you want to do? Ethan hesitated. He had known this moment would come, but knowing did not make choosing easier. I want you to have time to recover, he said simply. You are not ready for interrogation or transport, and you should not be treated as a threat when you have done nothing to deserve it. Leora studied him with a depth that made the room feel smaller, warmer. You risk yourself by saying that. Maybe, Ethan replied, but some risks are worth taking. She looked down, her fingers brushing the edge of the blanket. Where I am from, she said, mercy is rare. It is viewed as a weakness. Yet you offer it without hesitation. Ethan shook his head. It is not mercy. It is respect. She lifted her gaze slowly, a quiet vulnerability growing there. Respect, she repeated, as though the word carried more weight than he realized. Just then, the outpost lights flickered as the generators shifted into a new cycle. The slight dimming made the glow beneath her skin stand out even more, casting gentle reflections on the metal walls. Ethan returned to the console and typed a response to the message, keeping his tone deliberately neutral. Status normal. No concerns to report. Leora watched him, her expression unreadable. You shield me, she said softly. Ethan met her eyes. I give you time. There is a difference. She considered that, then nodded. Then what happens now? Now, Ethan said, moving the chair closer to her bed. You rest a little more. And we prepare for whatever comes next. Leora's shoulders relaxed as she leaned back against the pillows. The tension that so often lived in her posture eased, replaced by something gentler. Trust was too strong a word for what had formed between them, but something close to it settled into the quiet space they shared. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the snow in soft gold. Inside, the air felt warm despite the cold world beyond the walls. As Leora closed her eyes, Ethan remained nearby, knowing the calm around them might not last, but also knowing that he would face whatever came with the same choice he had made in the storm. He would stay. Evening settled slowly over the outpost, the light outside shifting from silver to amber as the sun dipped low behind the distant ridges. The long shadows made the medical room feel smaller, more intimate, as if the quiet itself had drawn closer. Leora rested against the propped pillows, her strength noticeably improved, though the faint glow beneath her skin still flickered with the rhythm of someone recovering. Ethan sat nearby, reviewing diagnostics on a handheld pad, but his attention drifted toward her each time she shifted or drew a deeper breath. She noticed it, of course. Leora always noticed. You are waiting, she said softly. Ethan looked up. For what? For the moment something goes wrong. Her voice held no accusation, only an observant calm. Ethan set the pad aside. I am just making sure you do not push yourself too fast. Leora's eyes held his, steady and searching. You guard me as if you know danger is close. Ethan hesitated. The truth pressed at the edge of the moment, and he could no longer avoid it. Your arrival during a storm was not random, he said quietly. Someone will come looking for you, either my people or yours. Leora looked down at her hands, tracing a small pattern on the blanket with her fingertips. My people will come, she murmured, but not for the reason you think. Ethan straightened, sensing the shift. Then why? Leora took a slow, steady breath before answering. I am not a soldier. Not anymore. I was part of a diplomatic escort. Our vessel was attacked. I escaped, but not far. The storm forced my landing. Ethan absorbed that carefully. A diplomatic escort, he repeated. So you are someone important. Leora lifted her gaze again, silver eyes catching the dim light. Important is not the word I would choose. I am a voice, a negotiator, one who is expected to understand both sides. Ethan considered that, the weight of her words settling in. Your presence here could cause serious tension if the wrong people learn of it. Leora nodded. Yes, that is why I feared waking here. Not because of you, but because my being in human hands could be misunderstood. Ethan leaned forward slightly. I am not handing you over to anyone who intends harm. Leora studied him for a long moment, her expression softening. You speak like someone who carries more than his own safety. Everyone carries something, Ethan said quietly. What matters is what we choose to do with it. A faint warmth crossed her features, not quite a smile, but close enough to leave an echo in the room. Before either of them could speak again, The console at the far wall chimed sharply, louder than before. Ethan stood, crossing quickly to read the message. This time it was not routine. A foreign signal had been detected entering the region, its signature unfamiliar to human scanners. Leora's posture shifted at once. "That is my people," she said, her voice low but certain. Ethan turned to her. "Are they coming to rescue you?" Leora shook her head slowly. "They are coming to confirm whether I survived. And they will proceed cautiously. They do not know who found me or what intentions await them." Ethan absorbed her words, feeling the tightening within the quiet air. "Then we need to make sure they understand you are safe." Leora held his gaze, something unspoken passing between them. "Ethan," she said softly, "if they see you as a threat, they will respond with fear. Not anger, but fear. And fear leads to decisions that are difficult to undo." He understood. He had seen fear make strangers out of allies and turn misunderstandings into conflict. "Then tell me what to do," he said. Leora drew a breath, steady and deliberate. "Stay with me when they arrive. If they see I trust you, they will reconsider their assumptions." Ethan nodded. "Then I will be right here." Leora relaxed slightly, her shoulders easing as she settled back into the pillows. "You have stayed from the moment you found me," she whispered. "Do not stop now." Outside, the last of the daylight slipped beyond the horizon, leaving only the soft glow of the instruments and the quiet presence of two lives waiting for whatever came next. The night settled deep around the outpost, the kind of quiet that held its breath. A faint vibration thrummed through the floor, subtle but unmistakable. Leora felt it first. Her eyes opened, silver and alert in the dim glow of the instruments. "They are close," she whispered. Ethan stepped to the window, though nothing could be seen beyond the frosted glass. The scanners confirmed what they both already sensed: an approaching vessel, its signature unlike anything human. He turned back to her. "Are you ready?" Leora eased herself upright, steady hands gripping the blanket as she gathered her composure. "As ready as I can be." Ethan pulled the chair beside her bed, not sitting but placing it close enough for her to see that he meant what he had promised. He would stay. He would not retreat to a safer distance. The soft hum grew stronger. A streak of pale blue light briefly reflected across the window, then vanished. Leora inhaled slowly. "They are scanning the structure. They will know I am inside." Ethan nodded once, grounding himself. No fear, just presence. The overhead lights dimmed for a moment as the outpost adjusted to the energy fluctuations. Then, without warning, the door panel flickered. Not a forced entry, but a signal, an unfamiliar handshake between technologies. A soft chime sounded, and the door slid open. Cold air drifted in, carrying a faint scent of something metallic and clean. 3 figures stood in the corridor, tall and graceful, their skin glowing with the same soft blue radiance as Leora's. They wore smooth, seamless suits that shimmered faintly under the outpost lights. The tallest stepped forward, her expression calm but guarded. Her eyes moved to Leora first, and a wave of relief washed across her face. "Leora," she said, voice gentle. "You survived." Leora's shoulders eased, though her posture remained strong. "I am safe," she replied. "Thanks to him." Her gaze shifted toward Ethan. The 3 visitors regarded him with a quiet intensity. Not hostile, but deeply assessing. The leader stepped closer to Leora's bedside, though her attention lingered on Ethan. "A human found you," she said, her tone carrying both surprise and something softer. "And you allowed him to stay with you." Leora nodded once. "He stayed through the storm, through the night, through everything." The leader turned fully toward Ethan. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she placed her hand over her chest, a gesture Ethan had never seen before but instinctively understood. Respect, gratitude, recognition. Leora watched him closely, her expression unreadable but warm at its edges. "He protected me when I was alone," she said quietly, "when I could not protect myself." Ethan felt his breath catch, not from fear but from the weight of the moment. The leader inclined her head. "Human," she said softly. "You treated one of ours with dignity. That is not forgotten." Leora shifted, the glow beneath her skin brightening. "I would like to leave this place," she said, "but not without saying what must be said." She looked at Ethan, her voice gentler than he had ever heard it. "You gave me more than shelter. You gave me time, trust, A reason to believe that peace between our worlds is possible. Ethan swallowed, unsure how to respond, but she continued before he could speak. If fate allows, I will return. Not as someone wounded, but as someone who chooses to stand beside you. A quiet stillness filled the room, warm and profound. The visitors stepped aside, granting her space. Leora extended her hand toward Ethan, not to be taken, but simply to bridge the distance between them. Her first smile, soft, real, and steady, rose on her lips, reflecting the glow of her people. It was small, but it held everything unspoken between them. Ethan felt something settle into place, something that did not need words. Leora lowered her hand slowly, her smile lingering. Goodbye for now, she whispered. And thank you for staying. As she walked toward the corridor, the soft blue light of her people enveloped her. The door slid shut behind them, leaving the room quiet once more. Ethan stood in the silence, the faint echo of her smile still warming the air she had left behind.